Hello. Why, you might ask, am I playing with dinosaurs? Well, I have some dinosaurs here that walk on 4 legs, and I have some dinosaurs that walk on 2 legs. I have some dinosaurs that are blue, my favorite color, and I have some dinosaurs that are kind of a light purple color. That's what we use to classify these dinosaurs, and that's basically the idea behind classification, putting things into groups based on some of their characteristics. Now, there are some characteristics we can use and some we can't, and we'll get into that as we move through. So don't forget to put your topic and your date at the top, and then have room for your main ideas and concepts as we talk through or as you go through the slide deck on your own. First of all, we come to a vocab word called taxonomy. Taxonomy is the science of classifying living things. These, I guess you would say, are not living. They're made of plastic. The actual creature, the organism, was at one time living. Dinosaurs were. But taxonomy is talking about classifying current living things. And so when we classify plants or animals, when we identify them, we are doing taxonomy. A little bit of history, just brief history, going back as far as 300 BC when Aristotle said, okay, living things either lived on the land, in the air, or in the water. And you can see problems right away with that because living things never live in the air. Some of them live in multiple places, like a dragonfly. It's born in the water, and it goes to the air, and it can also land and live on land. So it goes all 3 places. A duck, a frog. There's lots of things that kind of blow that classification system right out of the water. So Carolus Linnaeus, good thing for us, in about the 1700s, he's known as the father of taxonomy. He came along and started putting things into groupings called kingdoms. And he had 2 main kingdoms that he used. He used plants and animals. And plants produce their food by photosynthesis, and they don't move. And animals move, but aren't able to make their own food. They cannot make food by themselves. Now you may say, but last night I made dinner. Well, you prepared dinner. You didn't make dinner because you took stuff that was already there and you put it together for someone to eat. And that's different from being an autotroph, or photosynthesizing and making your own food. So Linnaeus continued not only with just kingdoms, but he put things in smaller and smaller groups. And as they were in smaller and smaller groups, they became more and more like each other. So this goes back to the Songs of Life Science. Did Ken pour coffee on Fran's good shirt? We haven't gotten to the domains yet. That's the first thing, did. Ken would be kingdoms. Poured would be something called phylum, coffee, class. On, order. Fran's, family, good, genus, and shirt, species. So you can see I have something for the Panthera pardus, and I have something for the Orcus orca. So those are their scientific names, their genus and species name. But you can also look and you can see that the Panthera pardus is in the Felidae family, which is the cat family. And it belongs to the order Carnivora, which is carnivores. And it belongs to the mammals class, Mammalia, and the Chordata phylum, the ones that have backbones or a spinal cord. And finally, the animal kingdom. So as it gets down the list, smaller and smaller classification, the organisms in those groups would be much more alike until finally the genus and the species bring it its scientific name, and something that's in the same species is able to reproduce and produce more offspring. The 2-word scientific name is known as binomial nomenclature. That's a fun one to say, so practice it over and over until you're able to say it correctly. Binomial nomenclature. So basically it means two-name naming. Usually those words are in Latin or Greek, and usually they have something to do with the description of the creature that is being named. So for instance, The barn owl has a white face. And so basically one of the words in the barn owl's scientific name means white. So in 1977, somebody created domains, and they took the 5 kingdoms at the time and they broke them into 3 domains. The domains of things that are eukaryotes, like the song says. A cell with a nucleus is a eukaryote. They're the ones that have a nucleus. And then it broke the other creatures that don't have a nucleus into eubacteria and archaea. And so there are 3 domains. The archaea are basically the archaebacteria, and the eubacteria is the kingdom of eubacteria. Those are the 2 bacteria kingdoms, and the other kingdoms then are in the domain of eukaryota. So this is just kind of a general idea of what you would find in each of the 5 kingdoms. And I say 5, and the reason I say 5 is because the 6th kingdom is just another kingdom of bacteria. And so we're not going to really count that when we talk about this, because they're very much the same in most regards. So we look at the cells. Whoops, I went to the next slide without meaning to. We look at the cells, whether they have one cell, whether they have many cells, whether it's without a nucleus, that's what this WO is, or whether it's with a nucleus. We look at whether they can move or not. And the yes, no means some can and some can't. It doesn't mean that they can sometimes and they can't sometimes. Same thing with food. Some of them eat their food, some of them make their food, some of them, depending on the creature, some make, some eat. And there's one even that eats its food and makes its food. And then we have the fungi. The fungi absorb their food. So we take food into our body. It goes through a digestive system. It pulls out what we need. And the rest is expelled as wastes. Fungi actually put their digestive juices out of their body, and they decompose things. And then they only absorb or take in the nutrients that they need. Moving on to reproduction, things reproduce sexually or asexually. And there are different words that describe those different types of reproduction: fission, conjugation, budding. Fungi use these things called spores to reproduce. And then you can see in the last column there's some examples of the different organisms that are in the different kingdoms. So in identifying organisms, whether it's identifying what kingdom they belong to or just identifying which species it is, we use these books called field guides. One of my favorite things to look up is birds, and so I have a bird field guide. And you can see on the front there's a bird, and most of you could probably tell me what that is. Just making sure. That's a cardinal. And that would be the Malay cardinal. Have you heard of the Malay cardinal? It's the opposite of the Famale cardinal. The Famale cardinal is a much duller bird. Male, M-A-L-E, and Famale, F-E-M-A-L-E. Yes, you're right. It's just male and female. So this is the male cardinal. And it's not just a cardinal. If you look it up in this book, this is called the northern cardinal. So being specific is important with field guides. Now, field guides are great because you can look at a bird and you can then compare it to the picture in the book and find out what it is, even if you're not looking at the bird currently. Even if you saw it a week ago or a month ago or a year ago, you might look in the book later and say, ooh, there is that bird I saw, and that is what it's called. It's called the northern cardinal. Another type of identification guide that we have is something called a taxonomic key. I have a book here that is a book of trees, and it's a taxonomic key as well as a field guide. So this is a field guide. It has pictures of different plants, has their leaves or their nuts or their fruit or whatever it might be. But it's also a taxonomic key. It also says, does the plant that you're looking at have this? Or does it have that? And then you go to the correct place depending on what it tells you. So it's like a choose your own adventure book. If you've ever read a choose your own adventure book, you can read the same book over and over and you get a different story each time. Unfortunately, taxonomic keys are not quite as exciting as choose your own adventure books. But at the end, it does tell you what the thing is that you're looking at. And you can find taxonomic keys for all sorts of different creatures, from animals to plants to fungus. You can even find taxonomic keys, although I wouldn't call it a taxonomic key because they're not living, for rocks and minerals, for clouds, and other sorts of weather events. In using taxonomic keys, if you're making one of your own, there are some words it's okay to use, and there's some words that you really shouldn't use when making a taxonomic key. Big and small don't work, because if somebody looks at this dinosaur, they might say, wow, that's really small. But compared to some of the other dinosaurs that I have in this set, it's actually a fairly large dinosaur. So if you use a word that makes somebody kind of qualify what you're looking at, like big and small, fast and slow, colorful, pretty, some of those words, just don't use those when you're making taxonomic keys, because people will get confused and they will not find what they're looking for. You also can't use names like reptile or bird or human. You need to use characteristics that those organisms have. So now it's your time to write a few questions for your quiz. And then if you have any specific questions about classification, write those down at the bottom of your page. You have plenty of time to do that. I'm going to sign off because I'm finished with my part. But you're welcome to look through this slide deck and learn as much as you can from the different pages that are there. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.